Today you're going to learn how to create a tiny planet image out of a panoramic picture that you took. In this example, I'm going to start with this photo, but in the end, this photo is going to turn into this image. Um, the way that it works is that you need a really good panoramic photo, meaning one that is a big shot. Ideally, you would go all the way around 360 degrees, and you would end up ending where you started from, so the pictures seamlessly overlap if possible. This is more of a just very wide shot. It will work as well. It but I will have to make sure these ends match up. When you do the picture, just a couple things to think about. One is you need to make sure that your panorama has a very level horizon line. It can't be crooked. If it is, you need to fix that. And you also want something that juts out on the top. Otherwise, it doesn't look very good. So you want kind of a blank sky with a really distinct line. And so let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that this end matches up with that end, because if you look at it, it's basically going to bend it all around a center point where it meets back up again. So you need it to meet up in a really clean way. Otherwise, you have a very, abrupt line and it doesn't look like a planet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the marquee tool, second tool down. And I am going to highlight a chunk of the left part of my image. And I'm just going to end kind of where that tree is. That seems like a good ending point. And I'm just going to highlight it or drag my rectangle over it. And I'm going to copy it. So I can go to the drop down and go to edit, copy. And then I'm going to go back to the edit drop down and paste it. And what that'll do is create a second layer with an identical copy of the image on top of it. So here it is. What I now want to do is I actually want to flip it like a book in the reverse image so that it matches up. So I'm going to go back to the edit and I'm going to go down to transform and I'm going to flip it horizontally. That's the way a book works. It's going to flip it on the horizon and now it's facing in the other direction. And I'm going to go to my move tool and I'm just going to drag this over to the other side. That's how these are going to end up meeting up in the end. If you want to go straight across, you can hold down the shift key and I'm just going to find kind of a nice spot where this seems to line up well. I think that looks good. I'm kind of looking at the line here. And it's okay right now. It's really abrupt, but we're going to do a couple of things to make this blend in to the image. So once I've got it where I want it, we're going to use masks or a mask on this layer to blend it. So the first thing I need to do is add a mask. That's on the bottom of the layers tab down here. It's the one right next to the FX and I'm just going to click it and it adds a layer. It's a white one. I haven't done anything to it. Remember, black is the thing that's going to mask it out. And I'm going to make sure that my foreground and background color are black and white. You can do that by clicking this little small image here that turns it black and white. And then I'm going to use this arrow to flip it so black is on top and white is on the bottom. Now I'm actually going to go to my gradient tool, which is right in the middle. What the gradient tool is going to do is it's going to create a gradient that slowly goes from black to white. And that means it's going to start by masking out wherever I start drawing and eventually not masking it out. So what it does in the end is looks like it fades in. So I'm going to go over to make sure I'm on my mask on that layer and I'm just going to click and drag with the gradient tool. Where you start clicking is where the gradient starts and when you stop clicking that's where the gradient stops. So I'm just going to click and drag. If I hold down the shift key it actually drags it very straight and I'm just going to drag it a little of the way in and let go and now you can see I have sort of this faded out look. So this is kind of blending in nicely. I need to do a little bit more masking because this is kind of messy up on the top. So I'm going to go to my paintbrush tool, make sure I'm on the black still, kind of give it a soft edge, make sure the hardness is at 0. And I'm just going to paint over this and get rid of that white sky because otherwise it's not going to blend in very well. Might get rid of a little bit of this to make it blend. That looks pretty good except for this tree. But the blending now looks really smooth and neat. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ultimately get rid of this tree. So, but if I have the blending the way I want it, which I do, what I'm going to actually do is merge these two layers together. And you can just go to layer on the drop down. Once you're done, now this is a permanent squishing of these pictures together, so do make sure you're done with all of your blending and your masking before you do this. But once you're done, go to the layer and just go to merge visible, and it'll merge them into one document. Now what I'm going to do is, now that they're merged together, I'm just going to get rid of this tree because it is not going to work very well. It doesn't match up with anything on the side, so I'm just going to make it go away. And that is what the spot healing brush tool does. It kind of helps us erase things in our image, and then Photoshop kind of looks at what's around it and uses that information to create something that looks fairly seamless. So I'm going to go in with a softer brush, and I'm just going to make my brush bigger. I like to use the bracket keys on my keyboard to control my brush size. And I am just going to drag over that tree and see how it does. And I'm just clicking on some of these areas to help fix a couple of little spots till I get it the way I want. That looks good. Maybe I'll get rid of this tree over there too. Great. That looks great. Now I'm happy with that. And now we're gonna get it going and turn it into a planet. If you haven't saved it yet, it's always a good idea to go in and save your image somewhere. So that if your computer were to freeze, you don't lose your work. Okay. Now what I need to do is I actually need to turn this into a square. If it's a rectangle like this and I bend it, you don't end up with something that looks like a circle in the middle. You end up with something that looks sort of oblong and a little bit weird. You can try it and see what happens, but I actually want it to look like a little planet, like a little round circle. So I'm going to go to image, and I'm going to go to image size, and I'm basically going to mess with the way this looks and turn it into a square. Now, if yours looks like this, what you could see is it's going to have this link. And what that does is it doesn't let you distort images. Linking it together means if you change the width, it will change the height and keep things in proportion. In this case, we want to be able to squish it and make it not stay in proportion. So I'm going to click the resample button, and that's going to let me type individually into these. I find it much easier to work in pixels than inches. So mine says inches, and I'm just going to go to that drop down over here and turn this into pixels because they're not decimal numbers. And I am going to make it a square. So what I would do is just take whatever your smaller number is, my 1080. I'm going to go up to my width and type in 1080. And that means it's 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels. And when I hit OK, it turns into a square. And it's squished looking, which is fine. I'm happy with that. And now what I need to do is flip it upside down. Otherwise, what it does is it's going to bend it around the sky instead of around the bottom. So what you're going to do is go to image rotation. And this time you're going to flip it vertically. That flips like a calendar on a wall does. Up and down. So now it's upside down, which is great, because it's going to bend it around this top part. And now we're ready to turn it into a planet. I am going to go to my filters. I'm going to go down to distort, and I'm going to choose polar coordinates. That's the thing that turns this into a planet. So filter, distort, polar coordinates. It's going to show me what it looks like, and I am happy with that. And I'm going to hit OK, and now I've got it. So it goes in a nice perfect circle. Now, I'm not quite done yet. This still looks a little bit messy. So what I'm going to do is a couple of different things at this point. One is I'm going to get rid of this weird seam here, right? That's because mine, like I said, doesn't perfectly match up. And just kind of like the spot healing brush, where Photoshop will look at an area and try to make things match together. What I'm actually going to do is go back to my marquee, and I'm going to kind of highlight this area on the seam that doesn't look very right here. And I'm going to use a technique called Edit, Fill, and if you fill it and choose Content Aware, that's kind of like that spot healing brush. It's going to look at what's around it and try to blend it together more seamlessly. And it did a nice job here, and that's fine with me because what I'm going to actually do is get rid of all this sky anyway. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to deselect it so the marquee goes away. And now I'm going to get rid of the sky so it blends nice and seamlessly and I have a planet because the sky is inconsistent. Again, if you haven't saved, I'm going to save now. And I'm going to make a new layer in the background so I can get rid of this. And I think I'll pick up one of the colors from the sky and have it blend into that. So what I'm going to do is I'm on my layer tab, and next to the garbage can, there's a little plus sign, and that's just going to make a new layer for me. I'm going to drag that layer down underneath mine. So this is going to turn into the sky. It's going to be underneath. And I'm going to choose what color I want the background to be. I think I'll blend it into this color in the sky. I think that looks nice. So I can just click my foreground color. Yours may still look black and white, so I would just click the foreground color, and that pops up the color picker, and I can go hover in my picture and decide what color I want to pick up from it that I'm going to blend into. And I think I'm going to go with this color right here, this beige color, and I hit OK. Now I can see my beige colors in the foreground, and now I'm just going to fill this whole layer with this color. So I'm going to go back to Edit. I'm going to go to Fill, and I'm going to choose, it's going to say foreground color. If it doesn't, you can just go up to foreground color. That's this color right here I just made, and I'm going to hit OK. And it is now hiding nicely underneath and is just waiting for me to delete some of this so it can blend in. So you can't see it yet because it's covered, but we're going to fix that. All right, I'm going to go back up to my layer with my picture. And now I'm just going to use the Magic Wand tool. The Magic Wand tool is super useful. It's the fourth tool down. It's where that quick selection tool is, but this time we're going down to the Magic Wand. What the Magic Wand is going to do is if I click on an area, it's going to select everything in my picture that looks like that part of the area. So when I clicked on this white area, it selected that. I'm just going to hit delete, and it's going to get rid of it. Now I'm going to click on another area that I want to get rid of, hit delete, click in another area, delete, and I've gotten rid of most of it. So I'm going to go to select, deselect when I'm done so I can see what it is, and now I'm just going to go with the eraser and get those last pieces. And the eraser tool is just above your gradient tool. I'm going to click. It works just like a brush, so I'm going to make sure the edge isn't super hard. You can make it a little bit hard or whatever you want, but I don't want a super hard edge as a rule. Go in, make my brush a little bigger. I'm just going to erase some of these little straggly pieces. Oops, I don't like the last one. Go in with a little bit of a smaller brush to get rid of that. And make sure there's nothing hanging out here, and make sure there's nothing hanging out here anywhere I can see it, and I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks really great. If you now are looking at your picture and you want to rotate it because you like it, but like maybe I want the tree on top, that's going to be the last thing I do. So again, just File, Save, just to make sure it's saved. And I'm going to go back to my move tool, and I'm going to hit here where it says show transform controls on the top. That's going to bring up a nice box on this layer. Make sure you're on the layer with the image. And if I hover just outside of the corners, I get a curved arrow mark, and that's the rotation. And I'm just going to turn it and rotate it around so my tree is on the top. And whenever you do any of those transform controls, when you're done, you need to tell Photoshop that you're done and you're going to keep it. So you either have to hit the checkbox or you have to hit enter. So I'm just going to hit the checkbox. I'm going to make that transform control go away so I can see it. And center it. And I'm done. So that is it. I've got my tiny planet, and I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go to save a copy. I'm going to go to my drop down and turn it into a JPEG. Make sure my file size is large and hit OK. And then I've got the JPEG version to turn in. So pretty cool. We went from this to this. I look forward to seeing some things that you all came up with as well.